So, hey everybody, we're on with Rachel. She's a TikTok star, and her handle, I guess, is Money Honey Rachel. Is that right, Rachel?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, welcome to the show. I was really looking forward to doing this because, I talk to a bunch of old guys. It seems like a lot of times, like Robert and I when we're together and all the advisors or whatever. And so it's really exciting, to talk to somebody that's educating, our youth.
Rich Dad Poor Dad was a game changer for me, as it was for, millions of other people. And I still push it really hard. So I try to get all my people to read it as well. But I first read it in high school. And by then I was already very much a finance nerd. So this was just another book that I was reading in my repertoire. But this one was different because it was the first book that turned me on to real estate investing. And that's what part of what lit the fire in me to pursue real estate investing at a later age. So that's what I credit that book for doing.
So, all right. Well, I think everyone wants to know, like, what was it, because even I myself, I wasn't investing or studying like you in my 20s, like I probably should have been. I started later in my 30s and obviously have had good success from there. But what was it in your 20s that made you like all of a sudden go, you know what, this is what I'm going to do?
There were a few things, and really it started earlier on in my childhood. I grew up in a really wealthy county. It was a very unrealistic bubble to grow up in Kentucky. And just to give you some context, some of the kids in my high school got brand new BMWs when they turned 16. My family was not operating that way. We were not going out to eat. We weren't going out ever on family vacations, nothing like that. So at a young age, I felt like I didn't fit in. And that's not the way you want to feel in middle school and in high school. I remember thinking to myself at some point that I didn't want to end up like everyone else struggling with money. I didn't want to have to operate on a strict budget or borrow money from my family and friends to make it to my next paycheck. I wanted to be different. And I had this epiphany then that what I did then would either set me up for wealth or for poverty. So I started taking it very seriously, reading everything I possibly could. They say that fear can be a big motivator for you. And I do think I had fears growing up, just being in a household where money was very much a stressor and living in an environment where there never was enough money. So I inherited a lot of those limiting beliefs. And that fear kind of drove me to become really ambitious and want to pursue financial independence.
Now we're going to get into, good debt and bad debt. So, Rachel, let's talk about that because I know, especially at your age, I remember in college, I was getting bombarded with credit cards, credit card, like sign up for this, sign up for that. And I had gas credit cards and Visa cards and MasterCards and all that kind of stuff. And I was running up debt and I didn't know anything about it. And you talk a little bit about this. Can you explain what the difference between good debt and bad debt is?
Yes, absolutely. And in my book, I talk about it in terms of bad debt and tolerable debt. So that's how I kind of look at it. Most debt is bad debt and it's just a waste of money. It's a very inefficient use of money. But when I think of tolerable debt or good debt, that is really debt that backs an appreciating or cash flowing asset. Okay, a great example of this is rental properties. I have mortgages on all of my rental properties. And that's because I'm using money to leverage money essentially to get a higher return. So that's an example of tolerable debt. An example of bad debt is almost everything else. So consumer debt, car loans, depending on how you look at it, student debt could be or it might not be. And credit card is a really big example of bad debt because you're just paying such a high interest rate for something that you're essentially consuming, and that's not going to have any future value. So that's kind of the way I look at it.
One of the things that I saw in some of your videos was you were talking a little about savings, and I think younger people are told to save money for investing. I think they mean that you can't any longer have any fun. How can they balance saving, having fun?
Money and fun are not mutually exclusive. You don't need money to have fun. So I really think it starts with living intentionally. I did an exercise with my husband recently, and we listed the top 10 things that bring us fulfillment and that bring us happiness. And it was things like calling my parents, hanging out with friends, going on a hike, going on a walk together around the neighborhood, playing with our dog, Those were the top things that brought us fulfillment. None of those things have anything to do with money. And I think it's a really powerful exercise. List out the top 10 things that make you happy or that bring you joy. Chances are, most of them, you don't need money to do them. It's really about relationships and it's about love and it's about experiences. So I think that's one thing to keep in mind. And if you can just live intentionally in that way, you're going to realize that you can sacrifice a lot easier and you can make your future self a priority, because that's what needs to happen in order to become wealthy. Is you need to prioritize your future self over your present self. That's a really, really hard thing to do, but if you can just set your sights on that and not get distracted, you will be very successful, and you'll be able to have fun now and have a very financially successful future.
Okay, guys. So next we're going to dive into how Rachel and her husband were able to build a rental portfolio of, hear this, 40 houses by the age of 27 years old. We're going to do that right after the break. And for those of you guys who want to go out, check this out, go to kenmcelroy.com/premium. Okay, so Rachel, can you explain to me the journey that you and your husband took in order to build 40 houses by the age of 27? I mean, a lot of people start with like one, or two, and so 40 by the age of 27 had to start, with some serious intention and a lot of work.
Yes, and to clarify, it was 40 doors, 40 units, 6 buildings. So we had several buildings that had a lot of units in them. But yeah, there was a lot of things that went into our success there. First was the fact that we both graduated without debt. So I paid my way through school selling Cutco cutlery. Have you heard of Cutco knives?
Of course, my son sold Cutco.
Oh, it's the best.
It's a great way to learn how to sell.
It's a great company to work for. So I paid my way through school doing that. My husband's a veteran, so he used his military benefits to pay for school. And that was a huge advantage for us, because even though I was only making $36,000 after graduating, I was saving half of my income. So that's the other thing, is that we were just very frugal. I never made 6 figures in a career or in a job. I was just able to be very, very frugal and save money for the down payments for the houses. Another thing that we had going for us is that we invested in Louisville, Kentucky, which is a great place to invest, low cost of living, and housing prices are and were reasonable. So in 2017, this is when we started investing in real estate. I was 24 years old at the time. In that year, we found our first duplex in Louisville, Kentucky. It was $100,000. So by then, we had each saved up 10 grand of our own money to put towards the 20% down payment. So that's how we started. And that's where the money for the first down payment came from. And then I also get asked, well, how did you scale so quickly? Because we essentially went from 0 to 40 units in a span of 2 years. And, a lot of people in our shoes would have done house hacking. They would have done the Burr method. They would have done all these things. We didn't have to do that because of all the reasons already listed, but also because I had my real estate license. This was a game changer for me. And I never had it for helping clients. It was only for my own purposes as an investor. But basically, we would fully deplete our savings for the down payment to purchase a property. But then I would immediately get a commission check back for thousands of dollars because I was representing myself as the buyer's agent on every single deal. Sometimes I'd get back 10 grand in a commission check. So we would save that for the next down payment. And we were also saving 100% of the cash flow that we were generating. And so that's how we were able to come up with 20% down payments, one after the other, and scale so quickly.
Yeah, guys, I hope you heard what she said. So my sister does this, Rachel. She's a real estate agent, and she does not necessarily represent a lot of clients. He uses it to be in the system to get the information off of the MLS and all the different services. And then she uses it to go find assets for her and her husband. And just like you, they use their money that they've saved to put down, and then the commissions come back and they accumulate again for the next one.
Yeah, exactly. And not only did it give me a financial advantage having my real estate license, but it gave me a time advantage. And for at least 2 of the buildings that we bought, we got in quickly because I had my real estate license, and I just had that slight time advantage of being the first person to know when something was listed. So there's a lot of benefits. And the way I look at it is, if you're going to close at least one transaction per year, it normally more than pays for itself.
Well, great, Rachel. Thank you so much. I really appreciate what you and your husband have done, and congratulations on 40 doors.
Thank you.
In just a few years, and being financially free at such a young age, and of course, spreading the news and trying to help educate the world. I appreciate everything
Thank
you
you
do.
so much. Same to you.
You bet.